Number 11 from our homework asks us to find, they give us y is equal to 3 cosecant 3x plus pi minus, wow, that is confusing. Oh, I already screwed up already. Huh. So we've got 1.6, problem number 11, and we got y equals 3 cosecant of 3x plus pi minus 2. And what are they asking us? They are asking us to state the period, the domain, the range, and draw the graph of the function. So how do we do that? We got to graph that somehow, right? And so cosecant is really the reciprocal of what?
A sine. No, yeah.
Yeah, so what we could think of it like this. We could say this is the same as y is equal to 1 well, let me back up for a second. If I say y of secant of 3x plus pi, did I write that down right? Is that how it is in the book?
I thought it's 3.
Yeah, the 3, but did I write this down correctly?
Yeah.
The vertical shift and the amplitude and stuff changes a little bit because they are different functions. So I want to focus on just right now we're thinking. So we're kind of trying to understand, how do we plug this in the calculator? How do we get the answer for this? How are the two related? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this and then ramp up and address the amplitude and then the vertical shift. Okay? Well, this is really what this is 1 over sine of 3x plus pi. Right?
Yes.
So now, are there any domain restrictions there? Like, what would be the problem there? So we're thinking this because we're going to address the domain. Are there any problems there with the domain? Yeah, the problem is that sine of 3x plus pi cannot equal 0. So when does sine equal 0? Well, you guys aren't thinking,
Wait, how do you know it can't equal 0?
because you can't have 0 in the denominator, right?
Sine of 1
When does this equal 0? When does it cross and equal 0?
at 0.
At pi, negative pi, at 0, and at pi. And so any multiple of pi for our measurement, in other words, x, cannot equal some integer k times pi. Everything else will work. So this is the domain.
What does K stand for?
K stands for any number. So if we say the domain x cannot equal k, k is an integer.
And we know this because
I just taught it to you. No, we know this because we know, and this is where you got to think. You got to be on your toes, right? Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. In other words, cosecant of whatever this stuff is the same as 1 over sine of the stuff.
yeah.
And we can't have 0 in the bottom of a fraction. So the only restriction to domains are we can't take negative square roots and we can't have zeros in the bottom of a fraction. So since this is really this fraction, we have to tell ourselves, well, x can be anything we want it to be except this can't be 0. So what causes sine of 3x plus pi to equal 0? In other words, what value for x gives us 0. Well, we're almost done. This isn't quite exactly right. We can't have the values of this stuff, so maybe I shouldn't put x. Maybe I should put stuff in the parentheses. Cannot, it can't equal k pi. In other words, 3x plus pi cannot equal any integer times pi. Okay? So then what do we do? Solve for x, because that's our restriction, right? So if we solve for x, I'm going to subtract pi from both sides, so I get 3x cannot equal k pi minus pi. You guys with me so far?
Yeah.
A lot of work, huh? So now what we're going to do is we're going to divide everything by 3. So when I divide this side by 3 and I divide this side by 3, I get x is not going to equal. Let's pull out a pi. Pi times the quantity k minus 1 all over 3.
You're gonna post this, right?
Yep. Now, if k is an integer and we subtract 1 from any integer, isn't that just an integer?
Yeah.
Yeah? So couldn't I just say something like k pi over 3 and make my life a little easier?
Yes.
Do you guys understand that?
Wait,
Could you do it again if I wasn't in the room with you? You will be able to eventually.
Wait, Mr. Adams. I'm still kind of confused on like how like the 3x plus pi cannot equal the k times the pi, because I know that you said that like you can't have 0 on the bottom of this sign thing, but I don't understand.
Okay, so let's go over it again. This is the stuff.
Okay.
And so this stuff is the same as this stuff. So 1 over sine of the stuff cannot equal 0, right? So sine of 3x plus pi cannot equal 0. So when does sine of stuff equal 0? Well, it equals 0 when we multiply pi by any integer. It happens at -1 times pi. It happens at 0 times pi. It happens at +1 times pi. It would happen again at 2 times pi, because that's the next spot where it'll, right? So what we're saying is the stuff in the parentheses cannot equal k times pi. K represents any integer. It can't equal -1 times pi. It can't equal 0 times pi. It can't equal 1 times pi. It can't equal 10,000 times pi. Because whenever we multiply something by pi, that gives us an x-intercept, right? And that's when sine of some stuff equals 0, and it can't equal 0. So what is the stuff? Well, the stuff is 3x plus pi, and it cannot equal k times pi, but we're interested in the domain, which is the x values. What can my x values be? Well, they can be anything except they cannot be k pi over 3. So I could plug in -1 pi over 3, -2 pi over 3, 0 pi over 3. And when I plug those numbers in to this equation, it's going to give me a funny answer. And maybe we could do that. Let's, just to kind of solidify that, if I come in here and I say 1 divided by sine of, and we said that it can't be, so we have 3x. So I'm going to say 3 times x, but instead of plugging in x, let's plug in some value over pi divided by 3. So pick a k value. 2. So I'm going to say 2 times pi divided by 3. Okay? And then I'm going to complete the rest of it, which would be plus pi. And then I'm going to close it. Now what will happen is I will get an error because you can't divide by 0. So what is that saying? So if I come back and I look at my home screen, what it's saying is all this stuff right here equals 0, and I can't have 1 divided by 0. And that'll occur for any value of k. Okay? We'll talk more. How do you guys feel? Let's do this. Why don't you guys try to finish up the homework and then post to the discussion thread if you get stuck. And then we'll talk about the test tomorrow. Maybe we won't take it on Friday, maybe we will. We'll see.
Because I think
Oh,
it might
you.
still be okay to take it on Friday, but not the quiz. Oh, shucks. Is there stuff quiz?
They're supposed to be. So let's see how,
Is it like the quiz that we did last time where we?
It's out of the book.
Wait, so Mr. Rams, what was the thing that you like
25 to
invited
49 is a
us
killer.
to?
that invite just had a link.
Oh,
That was just letting you know that the test is on Friday as of now, and then it had a link to the practice test. Okay? Let's try to do our homework tonight and see where we're at. And if people are still, because this is hard.
Yeah.
So if people are still a little confused, I don't mind taking an extra day. I know if you guys are confused, the third hour will really be confused.
Mr. Adams, I will not be here.
Oh, I recorded that.